That was awesome. I loved it. Okay, I was just handed this. Stephen James Cordin lurks in the outskirts of Joliet. He writes mostly writes crime fiction and horror. The following piece, Accidents Cost 20, shows what happens when you haggle with a hitman over price. Steve.
My fee is $20,000 for an accident. Landers frowned as I told him this for the second time. He was sitting across from me on a wicker chair, dressed in an expensive gray suit. The two bodyguards standing behind him were also dressed in expensive gray suits. I felt out of place in my black suit. I'm sure we can negotiate, Landers began. No, we can't, I ended. Another man in an expensive gray suit carrying a pitcher of iced tea came out onto the deck and poured us both drinks. I wondered if I could get a discount buying gray suits in bulk. My fee is $20. You can afford it. I looked across the deck of Lander's three-story house, which sat on a ridge overlooking his private beach. The view of the ocean and shore was spectacular from up here. The sky was clear and blue, the sand pure gold. The water looked warm and inviting, but there were only two people enjoying it. A young man in green trunks was coming out of the water. Nearby, a young woman in a red bikini sat on a beach towel. With all due respect, sir, why do you need me? Your organization must have the resources to eliminate any threat. True. Landers gave me a brief smile that did not touch his piercing green eyes. He led one of the largest crime families in San Diego. This man who ordered the death of others like someone who could order coffee. This is not about business. It is about family. No one can know I ordered this or suspect anything. So I have to go outside my people. I looked at his two bodyguards. Those two just can't kill someone for you and keep it a secret? We would not have this conversation if I wanted someone shot, Lander said irritably. It needs to appear to be an accident. My people are a little bit more straightforward in their methods. Which is why I charge 20. Accident requires greater skill and finesse to pull it off. Normally, I charged the same fee whether I was arranging an accident, used a gun, or an ice pick. The cheap bastard didn't even know that, though. Those piercing green eyes bore into me. 20 seems rather steep. That's my price. Accidents take planning, a little more work than just popping someone. Think of it as a premium for personalized services. I was getting a little annoyed with this guy, haggling over the price. Take it or leave it. He seemed to study me for a moment. I wondered if I might have gone a little too far with that last comment. He signaled one of his guards, a big blonde ape. I tensed as the guard reached into his coat, but relaxed when he produced a thick envelope. He handed it to Landers. Very well. He frowned, though. Half no and half of the job is done. You can get on this immediately? It depends. I took the envelope. It felt good in my hand. I may have to study the target, get to know his routine, what he does all day. That way I can make the action look more real. Who's the target? My daughter's fiancé, Paul. He's the man in the green trunks on the beach. Landers stood up. I'm afraid, though, I need the job done by Friday. I stood up. Friday? I'm not sure I can work that fast. Friday. I agree to your payment terms, despite the fact that it's a ridiculous amount. I expect the job done within my time constraints. My daughter is marrying against my wishes, and the ceremony is set for Saturday. I looked down at the beach. The fiancé was headed to the long flight of stairs that led up to the deck. The girl was putting her things in a bag. You are cutting it pretty close. And what about your daughter? She's going to be pretty upset. That is not your concern, Landers said sharply. Your only concern is to make sure he is dead by Friday, and that has no reason to suspect me. She must not marry him. I stared into his cold, piercing eyes. He was as much annoyed with me as I was with him. I thought about tossing the money back at him for a moment. That might be a bad idea with all the muscle behind him. I was good, but not that good. I also needed the 20,000. I sighed, slipped the envelope into my jacket, and held out my hand. Fine. He hesitated, staring at my hand as if it was covered in blood, and then took it. I nodded and walked over to the stairs. Just as Paul came up, I smiled at him. He smiled back. Then I gave him a quick shove. He teetered on the step for a moment and then fell backward. I heard the crack of bone over the tide when he hit the bottom. One of the guards rushed past me and down the stairs in a blur of gray. Landers came over to where I stood at the top of the stairs. The guard next to Paul's body sprawled in the sand. He looked up at us and shook his head. A young woman was coming up from the shore, screaming Paul's name. Oh dear, I raised my hand to my mouth. I am so sorry. I do not know how I could have happened. Landers glared at me and said nothing. I shrugged. If you don't have the other 10,000 handy, I can come back tomorrow.